Good morning, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next 30 minutes. US President Donald Trump discusses options including military action to take control of Greenland. Denmark warns the move will destroy the NATO alliance. France considers deploying soldiers to help maintain peace in Ukraine. Germany open to ceasefire monitoring role from neighboring territory. Syria and Israel revive security talks mediated by the United States in Paris. Agreed to set up US-supervised communication cell for military de-escalation. Cold snap grips Europe, creating travel chaos. Hundreds of flights cancelled. 6 people dead in weather-related accidents. Winter hazards expected to continue till weekend. And in sports, 2-time Olympic medalist PV Sindhu returns to competitive action for the first time since September at the Malaysia Open. The White House said on Tuesday that President Donald Trump is discussing options for acquiring Greenland, including potential use of US military. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said acquiring Greenland is a national security priority of the United States to deter adversaries like Russia and China. Washington's stark warning came despite Greenland and Denmark both calling for a speedy meeting with the United States to clear up misunderstandings. Earlier, Greenland and Denmark said they'd asked to meet US Secretary of State Marco Rubio quickly to discuss the issue. Denmark and Greenland have echoed the warning, cautioning that any US move against NATO member would fundamentally undermine the alliance. Trump's remarks and threats over Greenland have also triggered sharp reactions across Europe, deepening tensions within NATO just days after Venezuela operation. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer publicly rejected Trump's suggestion of taking over Greenland, stressing that the island's future lies solely with Greenland and Denmark, both close NATO allies. In the aftermath of the toppling of Nicolas Maduro, who was captured from his country, Venezuela, by US forces over the weekend, Caracas and Washington have reached a deal to export up to $2 billion worth of Venezuelan crude to the United States. The agreement is a strong sign that Venezuelan government is responding to Trump's demand that they are open up to US oil companies or risk more military intervention. US President Trump said that Venezuela is turning over 30 million to 50 million barrels of oil to the United States. On Truth Social platform, Trump posted that the oil will be sold at its market price and the money will be controlled by me as President of the United States of America to ensure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States. Amidst the reports of Venezuelan and US officials discussing exporting Venezuelan crude to refiners in the United States, oil CEOs are expected to visit the White House as early as Thursday to discuss investments in Venezuela. Venezuela has millions of barrels of oil loaded on tankers and in storage tanks that it has been unable to ship due to a blockade on exports imposed by President Trump since mid-December last year. The blockade was part of rising US pressure on the government of the then Venezuelan President Maduro that culminated in the United States forces capturing him at the weekend. A deal to sell the stuck crude to refiners in the United States would redirect them from China, which has been Venezuela's top buyer in the last decade, and especially since the United States imposed sanctions on companies involved in oil trade with Venezuela in 2020. Meanwhile, Venezuelan citizens crossed into Colombia on Monday expressing mixed emotions about recent political developments in the country. The Colombian government announced that it would deploy 30,000 soldiers along the border with Venezuela to guarantee security. Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, announced the activation of an agro-food, industrial and communal high command to protect the nation's productive apparatus after U.S. attack and capture of Nicolas Maduro. Rodriguez emphasized Venezuela's active resistance and spiritual growth in facing external threats and aggression. She urged Venezuelans to work towards fulfilling their duty to the nation through national unity across all productive sectors.
Y esto es lo que el presidente ha llamado.
Venezuelans, let's keep working so that at the end of 2026 we can say that we have fulfilled our duty as a country in national unity, that we Venezuelans have fulfilled our duty in all the productive sectors.
De paz que busca.
Also, Venezuela's acting president Rodriguez declared 7 days of mourning for members of military killed in the U.S. raid over the weekend to capture leader Nicolas Maduro. Cuba's government said on Sunday that 32 of its military and police officers working in Venezuela were also killed and declared 2 days of mourning. Chilean President-elect Jose Antonio Cast is visiting Lima on Wednesday. Peru's President Jose Jerry and Cast would be discussing a possible humanitarian corridor to facilitate the return of Venezuelan migrants to their country. Both the leaders support the U.S. action in Venezuela and viewing migration as a major problem generating insecurity in their nations. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke to foreign ministers of Group of 7 countries, G7, about the importance of freeing Venezuelan political prisoners and putting in place the conditions for democracy and planning for elections. Canada's Foreign Minister Anita Anand said they agreed as a group to continue dialogue about the importance of international law and other global conflicts. France and Britain have signed a declaration of intent on the future deployment of multinational forces in Ukraine if a peace deal is made with Russia. The pledge came at a summit in Paris of the Coalition of the Willing of mainly European nations to firm up guarantees to reassure Kiev. Heads of state and top officials took part in the Tuesday's talks in Paris. Unlike previous coalition meetings, the summit was also attended by U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. President Donald Trump's son-in-law, as well as America's top general in Europe, Alexis Greenwich, allies also largely agreed about robust security guarantees for Ukraine and proposed that United States would take the lead in monitoring a truce, but the key issue of territory is still being discussed. After talks with Ukraine's allies, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said peace in Ukraine was closer than ever, though the hardest yards still lay ahead.
It's important that we're starting the year like this. European and American allies, side by side with President Zelensky, standing for peace. And we are closer to that goal than ever. But of course, the hardest yards are still ahead.
And French President Emmanuel Macron later said signing of security guarantees, including deployment of a multinational military force, would dissuade further aggression on Ukraine.
This meeting today has had significant progress, which is reflected by the Paris Declaration for robust security guarantees for a solid and lasting peace. This declaration of the Coalition of the Willing recognizes for the first time an operational convergence among 35 countries that comprise the Coalition of the Willing, Ukraine, and the United States of America to build robust security guarantees.
Ukrainian President Zelensky, after the meeting, said Kiev's allies had determined how a European deterrence force would operate in Ukraine following a ceasefire, as well as which countries would participate.
The details have been worked out in the system of other documents. It has been determined which countries are ready to take the lead in the elements, guaranteeing security on the ground, in the sky, at sea, in restoration. It has been determined which forces are needed. It has been determined how the forces will be managed, at what levels the command there will be.
In other news, Israel and Syria agreed on Tuesday to set up a communication mechanism in the United States mediated talks to coordinate on security, intelligence, and commercial issues in Paris. A joint statement issued by the U.S. State Department after the talk said Syria and Israel were committed to achieving lasting security and stability arrangements for both countries. Both sides have decided to establish a joint fusion mechanism, a dedicated communication cell, to facilitate immediate and ongoing coordination on their intelligence sharing, military de-escalation, diplomatic engagement, and commercial opportunities under the supervision of the United States. This mechanism will serve as a platform to address any disputes promptly and work to prevent misunderstandings. The statement did not say Israel would refrain from further strikes or restore an agreement that was previously in place. A mass ultra-Orthodox Jewish rally turned deadly in Jerusalem when a teenage boy was crushed and killed after a man driving a bus hit the crowd. People were protesting against a law to conscript ultra-Orthodox Jews into Israeli armed forces. Under a ruling established at the time of Israel's creation in 1948, men who devote themselves full-time to studying Jewish texts are given a de facto pass from mandatory military service. The ultra-Orthodox make up for about 14% of Israel's Jewish population. In November, a new draft law was put forward in Parliament's Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee after a previous conscription bill was voted down in July. Bangladesh is witnessing disturbing surge in violent attacks against members of the Hindu community, with multiple incidents reported across the country in recent days. From sexual violence to targeted killings, these cases are raising serious questions about minority safety and law and order.
A 40-year-old Hindu man, owner of a grocery shop, has been murdered after unidentified attackers struck him with a sharp weapon in Narsingdi city of Bangladesh. The murder of grocery trader Moni Chakraborty has increased fear and anger in the minority communities across the country. Moni Chakraborty was attacked with a sharp weapon while returning home after closing his shop at Sindhu Bazaar on Monday. He later succumbed to his injuries. Local business owners formed a human chain demanding justice.
উনি আমাদের প্রতিবেশী সেই এলাকায় সবার কাছে সুপরিচিত ছোট বড় সবার কাছে সুপরিচিত এবং এলাকায় সে তার কোনো দুর্নাম নেই কিন্তু বাইরে কি করে না করে এটা আমাদের জানা নেই এবং যে এলাকায় কি বাইরে কি কেউ কোথাও সঙ্গে কোনো শত্রুতা আছে কিনা এটাও আমাদের জানার বাইরে আগামীকালকে সন্ধ্যার সময় মাগরিব বাদ এই মাগরিবের আঘাত হয়তো কে বা কারা তার আততায়ীদের গুলিতে সে নিহত হয়েছে
Bangladesh continues to witness brutal attacks on the Hindu community in recent weeks. On Monday, a Hindu businessman and journalist Rana Pratap Bairagi was shot dead in public at Kopalia Bazaar in Jashore. Bairagi, who was also the acting editor of a local newspaper, was fatally shot in the head by unidentified assailants. Police have launched an investigation.
Well, unfortunately, the Bangladesh society appears to have been much more radicalized in recent past. In Bangladesh, this is not the first time that these things are happening. They may not be orchestrated by a particular group. It could be stray incidents, but there has been a history about it. Since the 80s, 90s, we have seen that there have been minorities have been targeted in many ways.
On Monday, incident of a brutal gang rape with a Hindu woman also came to light, which stunned the minority communities in Bangladesh. She was tied to a tree and severely tortured in Kaliganj, Upazila of Jinaida district. The incident exposes the grim reality faced by minorities amid the unchecked activities of extremist groups. Officials said the incident occurred on December 31, though the complaint was filed later as victim was undergoing medical treatment. She was rescued in critical condition and admitted to hospital. One accused has been arrested and the investigation is going on.
Not a single person has been caught. And actually, in between the deaths of these 5 people, 6 people that now counting today has happened, there was also news about a terrible rape. A widow who was raped, and then they tied her to a tree and cut off her hair. And, it is absolutely unbelievably cruel, inhuman stuff which is going on. And I think more and more, even the recent sixth death, that also they're saying is because of jizya, because they're demanding jizya, and when the person cannot pay, then they come and, and they're really trying to frighten everybody into leaving Bangladesh.
These incidents put a question mark over minority safety, law and order, and accountability of administration in Bangladesh. Families of victims, including Khokon Chandra Das, Bajendra Biswas, Amrit Mondal, and Deepu Chandra Das, continue to await justice as investigations remain slow and perpetrators often go unpunished. Ravinder Chauhan's report for DD India.
Meanwhile, the United Nations has confirmed it will not send observers for Bangladesh's parliamentary elections scheduled for 12th February. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres' spokesperson said that UN does not deploy election observers without a mandate from either the UN General Assembly or Security Council. Meanwhile, Transparency International Bangladesh has criticized Bangladesh Election Commission's decision to cover accommodation and meal expenses for foreign election observers. Transparency International Bangladesh's executive director called it imprudent, discriminatory, and contradictory to the principles of impartial election observation. Still to come on this edition of DD India Live. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar calls on Luxembourg Prime Minister Luc Frieden. Countdown to 2026 Olympic Winter Games begins.
This week on Defense Dynamics, India is reshaping its military structure with Bhaira formations. What are ramjet-powered artillery shells? And how India's rocket punch gets an emergency boost with Suryastra. As Europe and Israel turn to India for industrial depth, my take explains the why. Watch Defense Dynamics this Wednesday at 8 p.m. IST only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, who is on a 6-day visit to France and Luxembourg, interacted with members of Indian community in Luxembourg, where he underlined the significant deepening of partnership with Luxembourg across political, business and tech domains. He also appreciated the contribution of the Indian diaspora in deepening ties between the two nations. Minister Jaishankar also held interaction with Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs Xavier Bettel, covering the bilateral cooperation and global situation. Both the leaders specifically discussed finance, investments, digital, AI, space and talent mobility, as well as continued deepening of India-EU ties. Minister also appreciated his personal interest in explaining Luxembourg's heritage and tradition.
We have now 77 years, 78 years going of our relationship, and we've come a long way. For us, we really see Luxembourg as a very important partner in itself, but also with the European Union. And at a very crucial time in the development of our own ties with the European Union. So the influence you have in shaping that larger relationship, the support that you extend, that is something which is of great value to us. And I thank you because I know in many ways you've been very much an advocate of deepening ties between India and the European Union.
Minister Jaishankar also met Grand Duke Guillaume of Luxembourg and conveyed the warm greetings of President Draupadi Murmu, appreciated his positive sentiments for India and for deepening bilateral partnership. After completing his visit to the United Arab Emirates, Indian Army Chief General Upendra Dwivedi proceeded on an official visit to Sri Lanka on Tuesday. The Indian Army, in a social media post, said the Army Chief's visit to Sri Lanka underscores the strong commitment of both nations to enhance mutual understanding, deepen cooperation in areas of shared interest, and further strengthen bilateral defense cooperation. The Army Chief will engage with senior military and civil leadership, including the commander of the Sri Lankan Army, Deputy Minister of Defence and the Defence Secretary. He will hold detailed discussions on matters of mutual interest, including training, cooperation, capacity building and regional security. General Dwivedi will also pay homage at the IPKF War Memorial, honouring the supreme sacrifice of Indian soldiers. The visit takes place against the backdrop of Operation Sagar Bandhu, reflecting India's enduring brotherhood with steadfast partner in the region. Moving on, strengthening connectivity between Thailand and North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh, Air India Express, India's first international value carrier, has announced weekly flights between Varanasi and Bangkok starting 1st of February. The new service will offer travellers from Varanasi convenient, non-stop connectivity to one of Asia's most popular leisure destinations. Similarly, it will provide convenient options for tourists from Thailand to visit Varanasi, Sarnath and other major attractions on the Buddhist circuit. This launch will further build on Air India Express's presence in Thailand. The airline currently connects Bangkok with Bengaluru, Lucknow, Pune and Surat and operates direct flights between Hyderabad and Phuket. On to some weather updates from across the globe now. Intense snowfall, icy weather conditions have caused widespread travel disruptions across Europe, with 6 reported deaths in weather-related incidents on the continent. In Germany, temperatures fell well below -10 degrees Celsius in the south and east early on Tuesday. Much of the country was covered in snow. In Britain, the Met Office said winter weather hazards could continue throughout the week for most of the country. Temperatures overnight to Tuesday had fallen as low as -12.5 degrees Celsius in Maham, Norfolk, in eastern England, marking the coldest night of the winter so far. France's National Weather Service said 38 districts would be placed on orange alert for snow and black ice on Wednesday. Hundreds of flights have been cancelled across Europe, with thousands left stranded at airports in Paris and Amsterdam. Disruption is expected to continue into Wednesday. More than 400 flights were cancelled at Amsterdam's Schiphol airport on Wednesday, causing widespread disruption to travel plans. Hundreds of passengers were stranded, with many unable to join connecting flights. Long queues formed at airline counters as people waited for information about when flights would resume. And in India, cold wave has gripped parts of the country as temperatures have dipped sharply in several regions. While dense fog reduced visibility in parts of Rajasthan and plains of Delhi and Uttar Pradesh, the Indian Met Department forecast a gradual fall in minimum temperatures over Punjab, Haryana, Chandigarh and Delhi in the next 2 days, with biting cold ahead nationwide. Kashmir is experiencing severe cold, with weather forecast of light rain or snowfall in higher reaches and near zero visibility caused by dense fog over the next few days. In the valley, 40 days of harshest winter, known as Chelai Kalan, are living up to their reputation. Meanwhile, southern states such as Tamil Nadu and Kerala may witness spells of rain accompanied by thunderstorms, with isolated heavy rains possible in some areas. On to sports now. Two-time Olympic medalist PV Sindhu will return to competitive action for the first time since last September at the Malaysia Open badminton tournament. Sindhu will begin her campaign against Chinese Taipei Sang So Yun in Kuala Lumpur on Wednesday. The 30-year-old Indian badminton player has not featured on the BWF World Tour since her quarter-final loss at the China Masters last September. Sindhu subsequently withdrew from the remainder of the 2025 season to recover from a foot injury that hampered her form and led to a series of early exits. She is also expected to lead India's women's team at the Badminton Asia Team Championship 2026 in February. Top-ranked Indian shuttler Lakshya Sen progressed to the second round of the season-opening Malaysia Open in Kuala Lumpur on Tuesday. Lakshya defeated Singapore's Jiahang Jason Tay in the first-round encounter that lasted an hour and 10 minutes. 24-year-old from Almora, who won the Australian Open and also registered a final finish at Hong Kong last season, defeated number 21 Tay in 3 sets. A 2021 World Championship bronze medalist, Lakshya, currently ranked world number 13, will next face Hong Kong's Lee on Thursday. 1 month countdown has started to roll on screen in Milan, Italy, to display the remaining time to the beginning of the 2026 Winter Olympic Games. The Games are scheduled to take place from 6th to 22nd February this year at sites across Lombardy and northeast Italy. The 25th edition of Winter Olympics will be the first to officially be co-hosted by multiple cities. Milan will host the ice events. The remaining events will be held in clusters around Cortina, Valentina and Fiam valleys. The Games will welcome more than 3,500 athletes from across 93 countries, competing for 195 medals in 16 Olympic disciplines. The Games will feature the debut of ski mountaineering as a Winter Olympic event, while San Siro will host the opening ceremony. And that's all for this edition of DD Live. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan this QR code on your screens and download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.